Hello, everybody. My name is Yosef Abu Hassan from Dr. Jean Baptiste Theories of Personality class, and I want to present to you guys my 30 for 30. So here we go. Personality is organized and relatively enduring over time, particularly in adulthood, and somewhat consistent in situations. Mechanisms and traits are linked in coherent fashions. Personalities contain decision rules that govern which needs or motives are activated depending on the circumstances. We will talk about how we are like no others. We will talk about the individual uniqueness and how it refers to the fact that every individual has personal qualities not shared by any other person in the world. Personality traits and states. We will describe ways in which people are different from each other. They define ways in which people are similar to some others. They describe the average tendencies of a person. It is important in decision-making abilities called psychological mechanisms. We will learn about how the input comes first, then the thought process or decision rules, and then the action or output. A state is a mental condition in which the qualities of a state are relatively constant, even though the state itself may be dynamic. So it's a state of mind or a mental condition that relates to how you are currently feeling. Personality mechanisms. We know that personality traits are rather consistent over time. How does our personality come into play? We will define input, which may make people sensitive to certain kinds of information from the environment. Decision rules, which may make people more likely to think about specific options. We will think about outputs, which may guide behavior towards certain categories of action. Influential forces of personality is the set of psychological traits and mechanisms within the individual that are organized, relatively enduring, and that influences his or her interactions. What makes someone a glass half full or glass half empty type of person? Many things affect how we view things. These effects are called influences. Four major influences are perception, selection, evocation, manipulation. How do we perceive the influences above lead to decisions? Grand theories of personality. There have been many attempts to provide a universal account of fundamental psychological processes and characteristics of our species, such as Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory. There are 6 domains, and they are disposition, which deals with the ways in which individuals differ from one another. There is biological, which impacts evolution and human psychological functioning. There's intrapsychic, which deals with mental mechanisms of personality. There is intrapsychic, which deals with mental mechanisms of personality outside of conscious awareness. There is cognitive experiential, which focuses on thought processes and subjective experiences. There is social cultural, which is how our personality affects and is affected by culture and society. And there's the adjustment domain, which is how our personality plays a role in coping, adapting, and adjusting daily situations in life. The science of personality analysis. How do we science? The steps to forming theories and testing. Steps. State your hypothesis. Collect data. Perform a test. Record data. Present findings, then decide whether to reject or accept your hypothesis. However, the absence of evidence does not mean an absence of a relationship. Introducing Karl Popper. He lived from 1902 to 1994. He is quoted as saying, "Science is provisional," meaning it's the best we can do at the moment. Science should attempt to disprove a theory rather than continuously prove them right. On the right, we have a photo of Dr. Jean-Baptiste. Steps to hypothesize for an experiment, and it just breaks it down how trial and error should go until you receive a solution. Different types of personality data explained. It's important to understand the report types and their differences. There are 4 different reports: the self-report, the observer report, test data, and life outcome data. Self-report: the experimentee fills out a questionnaire that is open-ended or unstructured, or one with provided responses, structured. There's the observer report. The experimenter takes notes on the test, can be in natural or artificial situations. Test data: the experimentee takes a test while being observed. There is life outcome data, study that takes place over a participant's life, associating events with the experimentee's lifespan. However, there is limitations to these tests. It is important to not only know the different reports, but their limitations as well. Self-report data. It is more often than not biased, where the reporter favors themselves for a specific outcome. In observer report data, the relationship to the proctor the relationship the proctor has towards the test subject may be biased for a favored outcome. Think mother to child, teacher to favorite student, etc. Test data report. Participants may try to modify their answers for a favorable outcome. Life outcome data. I yawned, sorry. Life outcome data. Correlation does not equal causation. The solution to self-report data is multiple tests with different questions. Solution to observer data, or proposed solution to these reports. Proctor with no relationship to the test subject, a third-party proctor or a professional proctor. Solutions to test data, fMRI test, or observations during which a test subject's lifespan are difficult to fake. Solution to life outcome data, compare with similar test subjects' data for validity. Okay. Next, we will talk about ways to evaluate personality reports. It is important to understand the solutions to perceived reports' limitations. Ways to evaluate personality reports. Reliability, validity, and generalizability. Reliability means the degree to which the obtained test result is true to the trait being measured. Validity, the degree to which a test measures what it claims to measure. Generalizability, the degree to which a measure retains its validity across different contexts. Think different groups of people in different conditions. Next, we will talk about types of response sets. There are 4 different types of response sets. There's acquiescence, there's extreme responding, there's non-content responding, and social desirability. These are ways that the person doing the tests can answer the tests, okay? So they're biased. They're basically 4 different biases that we are going to understand. And acquiescence is just a big word saying that people tend to agree to questions rather than disagree. So writing yes or I agree regardless of the content. Extreme responding means that the person is likely to choose 1s and 10s on a scale of 1 to 10, or just be very extreme in their answer. So either answering very low or very high. Non-content responding, tendency to respond to questions on a basis that is unrelated to question content. So answering the question like, did you have a good day? And saying that the sky is blue, or on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you feeling today? And you answer, not that well. So using a word for a number situation, or using a number for a word situation, or just something that has nothing to do with the data. Social desirability, tendency to answer a question to be way more socially appealing. So understanding you have a preconceived notion that your answer is going to be reviewed by a workplace or by an employer or by a teacher or by a friend, so you decide to answer the questions in a way that makes you appear in a certain light. Next, we will talk about traits and trait taxonomies. Traits. They are a quality or characteristic typically belonging to a person. The basic formulations of traits, presumed to be internal, encompassing things such as desires, needs, and wants from one situation to the next. Traits can lie dormant. Capacities of expressing dormant traits are present, even though they are not used. Nature holds the gun. Nurture pulls the trigger. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Split. It's about a character who has 7 different types of personalities, and the only thing is he doesn't realize he has 7 different personalities, and he discovers each one throughout the movie. Basically, each personality comes out during a certain situation, which affects how the movie goes. And then at the end, he realizes he has 7 personalities, and it was really interesting. So that basically just ties into how traits can lie dormant, and that during certain scenarios or during certain situations, that personality comes out and may not be so strong as the man in the movie Split, where it takes over his whole behavior and personality. But yeah, just an example. Next, we will talk about the act frequency approach. So, the act frequency approach is a procedure designed to identify which acts belong in which trait categories. So, there's a lot of traits. We're going to take whatever is associated with that trait and put them into categories. So, there's the traits and trait associations. Through act nomination procedures, researchers can identify hundreds of acts belonging to various trait categories. There are 3 key elements. There is act nomination, prototypicality, and recording acts performance. The act nomination is identifying the acts and the categories they belong in. Prototypicality, judgment, identifying which acts are most centrally associated with each trait category. Recording acts performance, securing information on actual performance of individuals in their daily lives. So, act nomination, identifying the act and the category it belongs in. Prototypicality judgment is identifying which acts are most centrally associated with each trait category, meaning that out of all of the acts, which ones are the closest can be used to describe in that category. Recording acts performance is just basically observing that act and taking down notes on it. Next, we will be talking about fundamental approaches to determine important traits. So, there are 3 fundamental approaches, and it is important to understand these approaches because there are so many psychological traits that it is necessary to come up with ways/approaches to narrow them down to make it easier to determine what are the most important traits among them. There is the lexical, statistical, and theoretical. The lexical approach encompasses defining and describing differences between people using the natural native language: creative, reliable, cooperative. There's the statistical approach, which means encompasses using factor analysis to identify major personality traits. It is useful because it eliminates self-bias. There's theoretical, which uses theories to identify important traits, limited by the accuracy and relevance of the theory. Next, we will talk about the Big 5 personality traits. So, before the Big 5 personality traits, theorists had come up with models that contained 4,000 personality traits, which was then revised to 16 and then finally 5 for the sake of efficiency. These 5 traits can be remembered by the mnemonic device OCEAN. OCEAN. O in ocean stands for openness, and it's described as creative or someone who takes new challenges. C, conscientiousness, which is described as someone having high levels of thought, spends a lot of time preparing. Extraversion, wide social circle, outgoing. Agreeableness, caring, assists others. Neuroticism, feels anxious, gets agitated easily. So, I don't know if you guys have ever watched SpongeBob, but the other day I was watching SpongeBob with my cousin, and just for fun, I was placing the SpongeBob characters into traits classes using this the Big Five trait taxonomy, and came to the conclusion that SpongeBob is a very open, extroverted, and agreeable person who's not very neurotic. And then his friend Patrick, on the other hand, he is open, he is extroverted, but he's not really that agreeable, and he might be a little neurotic, but not very as neurotic as Squidward. Squidward is very neurotic, not extroverted. He's probably very conscientious and not open at all. He's agreeable to an extent just because he has a job, but that doesn't mean that he will go out of his way to help people. Just food for thought. Next. So guys, remember ocean. We will be talking about Eysenk's hierarchical model of personality. Okay, so there's another classification system. This guy Eysenck, he invented a system of model personality conceptualized by himself, where each trait is categorized under an overarching super trait based on traits he thought were highly heritable. It can be remembered by the mnemonic PEN. Okay, so unlike ocean, there is PEN. So PEN. PEN stands for psychoticism, extroversion, neuroticism. Psychoticism can be defined as someone who has lack of empathy, has a penchant for the strange and unusual. Extroversion and introversion. Someone who has a high activity level and likes partying. Introversion would be the opposite of that. Likes to stay home and read books and do midterms, or would rather just not go to the party and just stay home and watch TV. Neuroticism. Someone who's neurotic can be described as someone who is has emotional problems with emotional stability, worries a lot, usually anxious or depressed. All right. So remember, ocean and then Eysenck, PEN. All right, next. There is the theoretical and measurement issues in trait taxonomies and psychology. All right, so there are meaningful differences among individuals. Trait psychology is also called differential psychology. Let's take this a bit deeper. People differ in the number of traits that they possess. These differences can be accurately measured and scored. According to trait psychologists, personality is a combination of basic and primary traits. These psychologists assume that traits are more likely to influence behavior when situations are weak and don't push for conformity from all people. We're going to take a better look at this later on. Remember the formula that we learned in class? Behavior is equal to the function of personality times situation. All right, keep that in mind. Theoretical issues continued. Hartshorne and May in 1928 reported low cross-situational consistency, which basically means that across different situations, personalities of people in certain situations weren't all similar, thereby challenging the traditional view of traits remaining consistent across situations. So what happens next? Michel in 1968 suggested that personality psychologists should abandon their efforts to explain behavior with traits and focus on situations instead. This led to what we now know as situationism. Situationism. If behavior varies across situations, then situational differences and not personality traits determine behavior. All right? So, situationism, if behavior varies across situations, then situational differences and not personality traits determines behavior. And here comes that formula again. B is equal to the function of personality times situation. Okay? Next. Theoretical issues continued. Michel's theory about situationism. It was a major step forward. It sparked a debate about the importance. Oops, sorry. Let's go back a slide. No. Apologies. Michel's theory about situationism was a major step forward. It sparked debate about the importance of traits versus situations in causing behavior. The result, both sides of the aisle modified their views. Trait psychologists acknowledged the importance of situations, and situationists acknowledged the importance of traits. So there was a consensus and people came to an agreement. This debate allowed for another step forward. Two lasting changes were the outcome. They are a focus on person-situation interaction and the practice of aggregation. Here's that formula again. Behavior is equal to the function of personality times situation. Personality and situation interact to produce behavior, and the differences among people make a difference only under certain circumstances. Okay? Situational specificity means certain situations can provoke behavior that is out of character for an individual. How strong or weak a situation is determines how a person acts. Weak situation, strong personality. Strong situation, weak personality. Person and situation interactions continued. 3 additional ways behavior is equal to the function of personality times situation. So there was situational selection, evocation, and manipulation. Situational selection is the tendency to choose or select situations in which one finds themselves in. People don't randomly put themselves into unknown situations. Hopefully not. Evocation. Certain personality traits may evoke specific responses from the environment. Okay, so let's do that again. Certain personality traits may evoke specific responses from the environment. So somebody walks into the room and we're talking among each other and we're saying, oh no, he's here. And then the students run away from the evil professor. Okay, so basically saying, just an example for evocation. And then there's manipulation, which is the various ways by which people influence the behavior of others. Example, the girl tells the guy his muscles look good today so that he'll ask her out. All right. Aggregation, what does it mean? The second focus of situationism. Longer tests are more reliable than shorter ones and are a better measure of traits. Any single behavior or occasion may be influenced by extenuating circumstances unrelated to personality. Aggregation implies that traits are only one influence on behavior. Personality change. Global measures of personality traits, such as those captured by the 5-factor model, gives us hints that personality can change over time. However, knowledge about personality change is sparse. Why is that? There is a bias among researchers against even looking for personality change. We will discuss the change of personality traits such as self-esteem, autonomy, dominance, ambition, sensation-seeking, and femininity. Changes in self-esteem from adolescence to adulthood. Block and Robbins examined self-esteem. They defined it as the extent to which one perceives themselves as who they want to be, whether they are close or far away. Okay? So self-esteem is, okay, so we all perceive ourselves a certain way. We all picture ourselves in our head a certain way, okay? And how close we are to that perception or how far away we are to that perception is self-esteem. So if we imagine ourselves as successful businessmen or doctors, or we perceive ourselves as good college students who get A's and B's, and in reality we're getting C's and D's, then our self-esteem will be probably low. But if we perceive ourselves as good college students who get A's and B's, and we actually do get A's and B's, then our self-esteem is high. Current self versus ideal self-description, okay, used to measure self-esteem. So basically just what I said. Higher correlation equals high self-esteem. Lower correlation equals lower self-esteem. Block and Robin studied in 1993 showed that people aged 14 through 18, there was no correlation with age and self-esteem between males and females. I found this very interesting. However, at the age of 23, results showed that men's self-esteem had risen since high school and women's self-esteem had decreased. I wonder why. Men are closer to their ideal selves while women were not. Autonomy, dominance, leadership, and ambition. Howard and Bray studied these traits in the 1950s and in their 20s on 266 male AT&T employees who were in their 20s and did a follow-up periodically until they were 40. They found several dramatic personality changes. They found out that ambition and motivation dropped once in their late 20s, okay? And then continued to drop over the next 12 years. Reasons that this could have happened: interview data shows men had become more realistic about their limited possibilities within the company. However, their scores on autonomy, leadership, motivation, achievement, and dominance all increased over time. Now we'll talk about sensation seeking. It is the sensation seeking scale determines sensation seeking. There's a positive correlation between age and sensation seeking up until a point. Studies show sensation seeking increases with age, then peaks between 18 and 20 years of age. Then it falls as people get older. Turns out, parachute jumping and wild uninhibited parties seem less appealing to older folks. Next, we'll talk about femininity and independence. Helson and Wink studied personality in women between the ages of 40 and 50 from Mills College in San Francisco Bay Area. In the study, they discovered that the most dramatic change occurred in the femininity scale. In this sample of educated women, they showed a consistent drop in femininity and a rise in independence as they moved from the 40s to the 50s. Also, stay-at-home moms had no change in independence. This hints that changes in independence are linked with the roles and lifestyles adopted within the sample. Next, we'll discuss the human genome. It is the complete set of genes in an organism possesses, and the Human Genome Project is a multi-billion-dollar research endeavor dedicated to sequencing the entire human genome and identifying the particular genes and sequences inside of DNA molecules. Scientists are still trying to figure out the rules of genes in body, mind, and behavior. There is a controversy about genes and personality. Researchers in this field attempted to determine how individual differences in personality are caused by genetic/environmental differences. Does genetics or environment shape the core features of human personality? Eugenics is the notion that we can design the future of human species using certain ideal traits to create a master race. So think designer babies. Eugenics, designer babies. Ideal traits, master race. Percentage of variance. Individuals vary from one to each other due to genetic and environmental factors. This variability can be partitioned into percents that are due to different causes. Heritability and environmentality. Heritability is a statistic that refers to the proportion of observed variance in groups of individuals that can be accounted for by genetic variance. There's two kinds of variance, phenotypic and genotypic, which refers to the physical differences, and genotypic refers to the genetic makeup, the differences in the genetic makeup. And environmentality is the percentage of observed variance among a group of individuals that are attributed to environmental, non-genetic differences. Behavioral genetic methods. There are 4 different methods: selective breeding, family studies, twin studies, and adoption studies. Selective breeding is used to select organisms with the desired characteristics and having them mate with each other. This is unethical and only done with dogs and other animals. Family studies, the degree of genetic relatedness among family members with the degree of personality similarity. Twin studies is the study between between twins and how likely their genes are alike. So there is also monozygotic and dizygotic twins, ones who are fertilized by the same egg and ones who are fertilized by two different eggs. Adoption studies examines the correlation studies between adopted children and their adopted parents. And finally, the limitations to behavioral genetic methods. There's advantages and limitations. I'll let you guys take a look at this on your own time. And thank you so much for listening to me. And I hope you guys all do well on your midterms. Bye.